Hey everybody, welcome to Piazza Research. My name's JJ, and in today's video I'd like to discuss the risks associated with Bitcoin. Now, no investment is perfect, but some things are truly superior, and it's why they will be successful in the long run. The first risk I'd like to discuss is liquidity risk, and this is only a concern if you are thinking about selling your Bitcoin. Many long-term investors don't plan to ever sell their Bitcoin. But if you are, there is a scenario where in the history of Bitcoin, there have been drawdowns of 30, 40, 50% in just a few hours, and this can crash exchanges, and you can get wiped out and sell at the bottom. And this is a serious loss for your investment. In addition, you could have bought Bitcoin on margin, which if the price of Bitcoin drops fast enough and quickly enough or significantly enough, you could be forced to liquidate, and then you have another serious loss. But again, this is for people that are only interested in short-term gains. Another risk is if there's a power outage, as Bitcoin is native to the internet and which is connected to mobile devices and computers which are connected to the power grid. Now, this power outage can't just be in a small isolated area. It needs to be a global outage, and it has to happen for a long duration for Bitcoin to see some sort of consequence from it. As you can see here, Bitcoin is a distributed network of nodes all across the planet. The United States has 1,700 active nodes. Europe has maybe 2,000, 2,500, 3,000 active nodes in Europe. Russia has 166. Even China, which banned Bitcoin, has 111 active nodes. Now, these aren't necessarily miners. They could be people just that are communicating with other nodes that transactions took place, and this is a form of verification on the network. And you can run a full node by downloading Bitcoin Core and help the ecosystem and protect it from regulatory risk as well as liquidity risk. Now, the other risk, or the next risk, is concentration risk, which is the idea that maybe Bitcoin will accumulate in fewer and fewer people's hands. And if we take a look here, we can see that Bitcoin is actually fairly well distributed for an asset, where maybe the smallest holders, people with less than one Bitcoin, own 5% of the entire supply. People that own 1 to 10 total tokens own 9% of the supply. And people with more than 5,000 tokens own only 13% of the supply. So they don't have a significant amount more of the total supply than the average holder. And this is a positive for the Bitcoin ecosystem. Now imagine you owned all of the Bitcoin supply. You own every single token. That network would not be very valuable because nobody's engaged in it. So there's actually an incentive to distribute as many Bitcoin tokens to as many people around the world as possible so the network can grow. And when the network grows, the value of each individual token increases, so people that hold a lot of Bitcoin will actually become wealthier by distributing some of them. Bitcoin did not undergo a pre-mine or pre-sale where people in insiders or in privileged positions receive tokens prior to anybody else could receive them in the public. Bitcoin didn't undergo an ICO, which is an initial coin offering back in 2017, which may violate certain legal statutes, and regulatory scrutiny could come down on many altcoins that debuted as an ICO. Now, if the Bitcoin economy were to form, where everybody was paid and transacted in Bitcoin, everybody had a Bitcoin salary, something called the Pareto Distribution may form. And I detailed the Pareto Distribution in this video here called Data Distributions in Human Behavior, so do check that out. And that's where we could begin to see a few people hold the majority of all of the world's wealth if everybody used Bitcoin. And the Pareto distribution is this shaded region where a smaller and smaller segment of the population has exponentially more than the majority of the population. And this is a common phenomenon that results in wealth distributions. And like I said, do check out this video where I detail all of that. So that is a risk if we do have a Bitcoin economy, but this isn't a consequence of Bitcoin itself. It's literally just a phenomenon that results from human behavior where a small group of individuals contribute to exponentially more productivity in the labor market. Another countermeasure to this concentration risk is Bitcoin's ability to divide into smaller and smaller units. More specifically, it can go to 10 to negative 7th, which is 7 zeros after the decimal point. Whereas in traditional and conventional systems, we use 1 0, 2 zeros, maybe 3 zeros after the decimal point. And this makes it much easier to distribute small amounts so that people can begin to accumulate some Bitcoin. The next risk is regulatory risk. Obviously, the government could attempt to ban it, or they could deploy targeted taxation. And if this were to take place in the United States or in Europe, it would certainly tank the price in the short term. However, the IRS already treats Bitcoin as property. I don't see them reversing this position at any time. And they recognize Bitcoin for what it is, and that's a commodity, a form of digital property. And any attempt to ban Bitcoin would prove futile, as we've seen with China, because people will just relocate and still continue to operate the network, regardless of what the government says. The problem is if there's a coordinated effort. Imagine every nation decided they wanted to attack and destroy Bitcoin. This would tank the price, most certainly, and then along with that, over the long term, we could see that the hash rate would begin to decrease, and the hash rate is just part of the Bitcoin mining process, and it's the amount of energy needed to solve the math problem to create a new Bitcoin block, in which all of this secures the network. And if the hash rate gets low enough, it could become vulnerable to a 51% attack. And a 51% attack, if successful, would be certainly not good for the Bitcoin ecosystem. It could destabilize it. And this is the most realistic concern for Bitcoin that I can think of. Maybe somebody else has thought of something, but I do think this is the most significant risk to Bitcoin. The next one is privacy risk. Obviously, there aren't names on the Bitcoin blockchain on who moved what and who owns what, but it is possible to piece together information outside the blockchain to determine who owns the wallet address. It's what I would like to call, you could hire a digital private investigator, a PI for cryptocurrency. And an example of this could be, imagine a hacker is successful on a ransomware attack, and they say, in order for me to fix your system, you need to send me Bitcoin to this wallet address. Well, we can see that Bitcoin sent to that wallet address, and then we can see if that person moves that Bitcoin to some other wallet address and subsequent movements, and then we can piece together through information on the internet, digital information, who orchestrated the hack attempt. Now, obviously, I don't do this, but I am sure people are savvy enough to do this, and you could probably even hire them. The next risk is educational or misinformation risk. And many people don't properly store their Bitcoin. They leave it on exchanges. They leave it on wallets on the internet. And people could fall victim to Bitcoin scams where you hit a hyperlink that takes your Bitcoin. You could hit you could fall victim to an advertisement that says if you give us your Bitcoin, we use it for a particular activity, and then we'll send you back more Bitcoin than you gave us in return. That is a scam. Don't ever do that. Alternative coins, many of them don't do what they say they do, and many of them don't have the network to properly secure them, and they might be engaged in DeFi, which is also inherently risky with its security. Studying Bitcoin is worth anybody's time. Doesn't matter what you do for a living. Understanding Bitcoin is valuable to you as an individual. The baby boomers had Social Security to protect themselves when they retired. Gen Z and millennials, we have Bitcoin. If you enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe, and be sure to check out the next one. See ya.